Hi, my name is Calixto Chichilla. I'm the founder and executive director of the New York Latino Film Festival.
And my name is Eric K. Thomas, and I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of the Quintessential Gentleman.
And we're proud to partner with the Quintessential Gentleman and American Airlines on this year's Futuro Digital Conference.
We're bringing you 3 impactful panels that are going to help you to be a better content creator. These industry experts are going to give you the information you need. Right, Calixto?
That's right, Eric. And this year, we're proud to present an amazing set of sessions from the top multicultural creatives. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to Futuro.
It's funny. As we start to go places again, maybe we'll find the places we want to go aren't really places at all. They're people. That's why we've been hard at work, making sure you feel confident every step until you get to them. So when you're ready, our people can't wait to take you to yours. You are why we fly.
Welcome to the New York Latino Film Festival's 2021 Futuro Digital Conference presented by the Quintessential Gentleman. My name is Q Jackson, lifestyle editor of the Quintessential Gentleman, and I am so pleased to have you all here with us today. With the rise in entrepreneurship and the growth of social media, content creators are now turning their hobbies into businesses. But as we know, being a leader in business is not for the faint of heart. We've gathered some amazing people to give you some expert tips on building your brand. Welcome to our Hustle 101 business panel.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joseph Williams, and I am the Senior Manager of Communications at the Oprah Winfrey Network. Happy to be here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Benoni Tagoe. I run a company called Radio. We call it Audio Everywhere Company because we want to exist everywhere that audio exists.
Hello, everyone. Former senior manager of culture marketing at Pernod Ricard. Currently run a brand consultancy called Craft Brand Theory. Looking forward to it.
Hello, everyone. I am Kameron Mack, creative director, filmmaker, and Black queer advocate living in Los Angeles. Looking forward to this conversation.
Well, we definitely like to thank you guys for joining us today. We have some amazing questions, and I'm excited to share this with the panel and with everybody out there watching. So if you guys don't mind, let's go ahead and get into it. So we're going to start with you, Karim. What does a partnership look like for you in the field that you're in?
That's a good question. I think a successful partnership for me is achieved when there's natural synergy between the brand and the creator. When there's natural synergy, and I mean natural synergy when there's like either like an affinity towards the brand, where they actually like the brand or similar brands in the category, or there's an existing comfort level from working with brands in that category. A lot of times when you're able to achieve that synergy, it's easy to find that balance between the brand's tone, the brand's voice, and that natural authenticity and perspective of the creator. So neither one overshadows the other. It's kind of a nice balance. And that usually helps to achieve like a great high level of authenticity. Because we know the consumers are not this gullible, group of people that our advertisers said in the past. Consumers see through the bullshit. So it's very important that we maintain, a certain level of authenticity. And sometimes, content creators are not necessarily business managers. So it's very important, that they're able to understand what the creative brief is, and how to deliver and what to deliver on to maintain that great partnership. So that's just some of the areas I look at.
We appreciate that. And Joseph, having the opportunity to work with the OWN network, what does a successful partnership look like? With you work with one of the most powerful Black women in the world, but what does a successful partnership look like for you?
I think if you're thinking of it, you can think of it in a couple different ways. If you're looking at influencers and those type of sort of content creators, I think I would piggyback off of what Karim said. You need to make sure that you're creating something that fits the aesthetic, fits the brand, and also the campaign, because every campaign is going to be a little bit different. Something I always think, and it's another way of saying what Karim said again, is just sticking to your vibe and your genre. Like if you're a comedian, stick to comedy, that's okay. If you're someone who does well with like drama and recreating things, do that. If you're talking about a TV show or a film, I think storytelling is like paramount. You have to know that audience very well that you're going to create content for. So before I was at the Oprah Winfrey Network, I worked in the agency life, and I worked on like a smorgasbord of different television shows and films with a lot of different brands. So it was always about the storytelling and then also filling in the gap to create those new opportunities that may have not been showcased before.
Cam, what does a successful partnership look like for you?
I mean, after everything they just said, I feel like they really knocked it out of the park. For me, authenticity is really important, though, making sure that I really am partnering with brands that make sense for who I am. And also just thinking about my greater network too. Me being the creative director of Westbrook, which is owned by Will and Jada Smith, I'm always also thinking about how does this brand align even with our core values as a company and also as them as the stars that they are. So it's just all about making sure that it just makes sense. And things as small as making sure that the social caption is in the right voice and in the right tone. Like those are little details that some people don't think about. Sometimes it's always about like what it's going to look like and the image of it all. And does this look like something that I would post? But sometimes you can get pigeonholed into having to post something that looks really great visually, but then the caption is nowhere near in your voice or in your tone. And it comes off too commercial or too, oh, this is clearly it's an advertisement or it's a sponsored ad. So it's all about just making sure that all those little details really align perfectly with who I am and my audience, and also making sure that it aligns with the messages that I want to put out. You hear a lot of influencers, or you hear a lot of people in the industry talk about like, I would never promote something that I don't really use, which we all know isn't the case. If somebody has a big enough check, you're gonna promote that product. But for me, at the stage I'm at right now in my career, I still try to use that discretion. I really try to think about what is the message and what is the brands that I'm putting out. And the ones that align perfectly, to me, that's where the perfect partnership really comes in. And also it's something that's effortless. It's something that's easy. If we have to go back and forth too much about wording, copy, this creative, then maybe it's just not the right opportunity, and it has nothing to do with what that brand is. It's just that everything should really just make sense. And if you have to ask too many questions, then that means I feel like you're trying to force it. And the moment you start forcing it, it's never going to be perfect. So for me, those are just some of the things that I would say that I think about or I consider when it comes to identifying what brands I would like to partner with and what would make it a perfect partnership.
Okay, Benoni, what do you think it takes to create a successful partnership?
I'll piggyback a lot off what Cam said. It has to make sense. I think that, as the brand, you have to know what your goals are. And, sometimes your goals are money, revenue related. Sometimes they're reach related. Sometimes they're breaking into a new market related. It can run the gamut, but you have to decide what those are. And then from there, say, okay, this is what success looks like for me. And for every partnership, it's going to look different. And you could do the same partnership, but do it at different times of the year, and it could be something different. And then with the talent that you're working with, it's the same thing. You got to figure out what their goals are. For us at radio, a lot of times, we work with brand new artists, and for them, some of them come in and say, I want to be the biggest artist in the world. So we have to do what we have to do to get them to being the biggest artist in the world, or being a notable artist. And then there's some talent that we work with that they're just like, look, I just want a successful career. No one may ever know my name, but I'm able to sustain my lifestyle off of my talent. So it really is a case by case basis, is the best way that I would put it. But it takes listening and just making sure that you're aligned. Your company's aligned with what they want, and they're aligned with what you want to represent.
Now, the next question, it kind of goes a little bit more in depth on what you guys just said. But when you look for partnerships with content creators, what are some of the things that you guys are looking for? Let's start with you, Joseph.
I think Benoni it provided a great springboard. I mean, I think a really great partnership looks like both sides knowing what they really want out of that partnership and out of that campaign. Um, a partner who really wants to work on behalf of the campaign, someone who is flexible. I think a lot of people sometimes think, oh, everything should be very cookie cutter, and it is to a certain extent, but you do have to add nuance on certain things, because that'll really be what blows out the campaign. I mean, if you think about, Benoni's space, there's a lot of singers, but there's only one Jasmine Sullivan, there's only one Brandy, there's only one Beyonce, there's only, we can run the gamut of people, but the nuance is what really makes them successful. And when I think about partnerships, I think about people who add nuance. Like, we can find someone to do anything that we want just easily, but are they going to do it in a way that really propels and accentuates what we're really trying to get out of this campaign? That's usually what I think about for successful partnerships. And I say this all the time outside of this and other panels, like, people who are actually kind and good people, because that takes you so far. Like, the fact that I can have a respectful conversation with you, a respectful discourse, and we can find a median is just so important to me when we're talking about working. Another way to say that is diplomacy.
Now, Benoni, what about you?
The number one thing I look for is vision. Does this talent or does this creator have a vision for themselves? And to my previous point, whether they want to be big, whether they want to be small, whether they want to just have a sustainable career, whatever. Do you have vision? Do you know where you're trying to go? The second thing that I look for is a team, because the talent can have vision, but then they need a team and a manager, or a couple people to help push that, so that when I come in and I add whatever it is that I'm going to add to the mix, I'm able to take that thing further. But vision, team, and then being willing to compromise. A lot of times in partnerships, it's going to be a give or take. The worst thing that I see in the music industry all the time is someone will sign a talent and then try to change everything about the talent. And I don't believe in that. I don't think that you need to change everything about the talent, but I do think that there's going to be some compromises that are going to have to be made for the talent. Say, hey, we found you at this place and you said you want to go to this other place. Here's how we get there. It's not to change the core of who you are, but there are some things that we're going to need to do different. And then there's also going to be some compromise on my part. I'm going to have to say, okay, I don't really think we should go about it that way, but at the end of the day, we trust the talent, and we believe in the vision, and we believe in their ability to get there. So we're going to do our best to support it. So trust, vision, and compromise is what I would say.
Okay. And Cam, what do you look for when it comes to partnerships with content creators?
Yeah, so I'm a storyteller first and foremost. I try not to let my industry labels define me. For me, it's all about telling stories and doing that in whatever platform, distribution, whatever. So when I think about like what the type of things I'm looking for in a partnership, I'm always asking myself, well, first and foremost, like, what are the messages that I'm trying to put out? What are the stories that I'm trying to tell? And who are some of the different brands who can really bring this story to life, or who can assist me upon this journey of getting this content created or published, et cetera. So I mean, going back to what I just said and what a lot of people also just said, it's all about just making sure that it just really just makes sense for the overall like message, because I'm always thinking about like my audience or the audiences that I'm creating content for. And I want to make sure that I'm going after certain brands that also make sense within that world. So that would be something that's really big when it comes to like what I look for in a partnership. Reach is also something really important. There's only so far my content or the work that I'm doing is going to go. So I'm also thinking about like what different partners, what different brands are going to help me bring in or tap into a new market. Who's going to be the people who's really going to put me into different demos or different territories that I may not have considered, but there's a huge opportunity to create content or to be able to reach those different individuals in those markets as well. So that is really important. And then I would say like the last thing is, I believe that Benoni was just saying this, but it's also just making sure that we're just both kind of like figuring out what each other's both KPIs or objectives are. Like, all right, this is what I'm bringing to the table. This is what you're going to be bringing to the table. And just looking at it as like a true business partnership. It's like, this is what I'm bringing to you. This is what you can bring to me. And sometimes like it isn't going to be necessarily 100% equal, but like there's still a really, really big opportunity to be able to create something really special and to create something really powerful. So I would say like those three things are some of the things that I really look for when I am either going after a partnership or if I'm considering a partnership with a particular brand.
And Karim, we definitely know that, you know, working with content creators and creating those successful partnerships are big in your industry. So what are some of the things that you look for when working with a content creator?
Wow, going last, man. These guys are really knocked out the park with some great answers, man. What I learned just working with creators, first of all, is that not all creators are created equally. So there's definitely uniqueness across all the creators I work with. But I tend to qualify the content creators in 4 different areas. So I mentioned this when the first question. I look at if they are active in that category. My category at the time was spirits. So is there a level of active presence in that particular category? If they're active with certain brands or similar brands in the category, either adjacent lifestyle brands that fit. Also, I look at if the content creator is an influencer. This is distinguished. Some creators create for other people. They're kind of behind the scenes. They don't really they're not putting themselves out on Front Street. They're not trying to be an influencer. Then there are other content creators that are influencers. So for those content creators that are influencers, I like to look at their social channels and see if it's too ad heavy. So if I like to see a balance between like organic lifestyle content and ad content. If it's too ad heavy, where everything is an ad, then I think that it's hard to build that engaged audience because they're going to look at it like that influencer just getting paid and bought. There's no like unique, there's no like sense of organic presence there. So I try to look at that, to look for that balance. The third thing is I try to look to see if the creator has a clear brand identity. If that person has a clear brand identity, a brand voice, as a brand manager, it allows me to really get a good sense if this is going to be a good fit directionally for us. So, you know, having that creator be very clear on who they are, what their brand values are, what their tone of voice is, what their vision is, as I forgot who said it earlier, it really helps to kind of do a proper vetting if that's a good fit. And the last thing, which I'll probably say this in every answer to the question, is authenticity. Authenticity is so central to brand storytelling. I can't stress that enough. Consumers are much smarter these days than we give them credit. So it's very important that the partnership is rooted in authenticity in a way that the brand is not forcing the creator to create something that they want to see. They obviously align with the creator because they trust their vision. They trust that they have their audience best interest in mind, and they turn over the steering wheel to that particular creator and allow them to drive that campaign. But authenticity is critical in that relationship. So those are some of the things I look at.
Let me just say that you guys are making this so easy today. These answers that you guys are spitting out are absolutely amazing, and you're making it easy to flow into the next question. So with that being said, the next question is, you all as people who work with content creators or as people who are content creators, how do you suggest people distinguish between their personal brands and their business brands? And with that, we're going to start with you, Benoni.
Yeah, I think that, it ranges. I think, today with social media, I think that they kind of fuse together the personal brand and the business brand. The number one thing is like when you are a brand, or let's just say when you're a personal brand and you're trying to present something to the world, the number one thing that you have to be able to sell or tell the story of is why are you the person that can bring said thing to the world, right? So if you're a screenwriter and you want to do a story about the military, and your family has a long history of being in the military, then bam, now you're the person that could tell that story, as opposed to me, who I don't have any family that's been in the military. If you and I step into the same room, obviously you're going to be more credible. And so I think that a lot of the times those two things fuse together just with social media in the way that content is 24/7. So sometimes I would just say you have to figure out what that is for you. But it's harder and harder these days unless your brand is extremely like one thing and then your personal brand is an extremely the opposite thing. It's hard to differentiate the two a lot of times.
Cam, how about you? How would you suggest people distinguish between their personal and their business brands?
So this is such a good question because this has been something that I have been trying to tackle or to get full clarity on for myself. The reason that this has been something that's been really difficult is because I feel like my personal brand and my professional, my business brand kind of go hand in hand. I feel like the reason why I had the position that I have, or that I'm even at the place that I'm at in my career, is because of my personal brand and the authenticity that I bring to my personal brand. For so many years, I thought that working in the industry, like I went to school for broadcast journalism. So the goal was to be either like an entertainment news anchor or to produce entertainment talk shows. But I feel like I was doing it through somebody else's textbook or through somebody else's lane or someone else's blueprint. But the moment that I kind of started to say, you know what lane do I really want to create in the entertainment industry? What really is my voice? What am I bringing to the space that is new and fresh and hasn't been done before? That's when my career started to really take off. And that's when a lot of the different business opportunities really started to come, because people stopped looking at me as a resume and they started to identify and as like, no, this is someone who has a voice and has a unique point of view as a creator that we want to align with. So we want to bring him to this company. We want to have him on this project. We want him to produce this. We want him to direct this. So when it comes to like my personal and my professional, so much of who I am as a person goes into the person that I am and how I show up or how I pour into different brands or companies that I work with. But what I will say in regards to how I try to make sure that I do separate the two is, anytime I am working for a corporation, I do have to go into that opportunity knowing that this is somebody else's vision and I'm just a small part of that vision. Anytime I'm like talking to like, whether it's a college student or someone who views me as a mentor, I always say, you got to remember, even if it's your 9 to 5, you don't work for that 9 to 5. You're in partnership with that 9 to 5. You give them that 9 to 5 something, and that 9 to 5 is giving something back to you in return, even if it's just a paycheck. But at the end of the day, you still have to understand like the core values, all of the mechanics, everything that really goes into that business, unfortunately, is somebody else's vision. If that's somebody else's dream, that's somebody else's professional aspirations, and this is just a chapter in yours. So you kind of have to still make sure that you understand that. And you have to make sure that when you're working for these different businesses, that personal identity, that person that you say you want to be, will never perfectly align with any company you work with. And it don't matter how incredible those people are. Will Smith and Jada, those two were two of my biggest role models growing up. They are two of the people who made me even believe that Black people deserve to be in Hollywood and that we do have a place in the entertainment industry. But at some point, I know that because of my personal aspirations, I'm going to have to transition from this company and go off and do something for myself. So again, when it comes to the personal and professional, for me, it kind of goes hand in hand. But at the end of the day, the personal will always trump the professional. And that's just something that I always try to tell myself and tell other people that I speak with.
Okay, so let's do Kareem and then Joseph.
This is a really good question. When I saw this question, I just immediately thought about. I'm not sure if other guys thought about. I immediately thought about Jay-Z's. I'm not a businessman. I'm a businessman. That just rings in my ear because it's so hard to distinguish between like the personal and the business. I'm still trying to figure it out. I wish I had the answer, like a really wise answer for you guys. I'm still trying to figure it out because for me, it's been like a very blurry line my entire career. And a lot of the people I work with, they're such strong have such strong personal values, and that carries over into their business values. So I think a lot of times, even when looking for content creators, I look for consistency between the two. Because you can't, for example, I think somebody mentioned earlier being a nice person. You can't project being a nice person through all your content, but then you are, opposite in your personal life, your personal values. So again, people see through that, the authenticity of that, the integrity in that. So I try to look for consistency between the two. Like you look at a person like, I could look at, like, for example, I could look at Issa Rae's work and see that she's all about like community, about like community empowerment, about, just diversity. That informs her work. So you can kind of see the personal and you can see the business values there. So I think it's kind of hard if you a valued person to kind of separate the two. But it's really up to like the content creators to decide how visible they want to be in terms of their personal and their business life. But I can say definitely it is a challenge. I'm looking forward to hearing more about how people have been able to distinguish it because I haven't figured it out yet.
I feel like this is kind of my sweet spot just as a publicist, because in publicity, you really have to teach people how to do both. And I think it really starts with integrity and authenticity. And probably someone that comes to mind for me is like somebody like a Rihanna, because she is the same person in business that she probably is or comes across as in her what seems like her personal life, right? And so you don't really have too much variance in that because there's that synergy on like her integrity, what she stands for, and then who she is as a person. So when she interacts with people on social media, it's the same energy. We're going to be respectful of one another, and that's just how we're going to move. And I think people who do that very well tend to do very well. And Kareem, hit on something I was saying earlier about being a nice person. I think I've been lucky just in my space. I haven't worked with any people who aren't kind or who aren't nice, but I have heard the stories. And what ends up happening is those stories catch up with you. And they catch up with you because we're in a day and age where you cannot outrun a cell phone. Someone is going to catch you doing something, saying something, recording whatever. And if what you said doesn't match up to who you projected yourself to be, people they're gonna really dig in on that. I mean, if we look at Black Twitter is a great example of when you're not authentic and you don't have integrity and what you said doesn't match up, because there's that whole "this is you" trend where people will call you out when you are not who you said, or you are not who you post to be. POST, right? You posted one thing, but you're doing another thing. And I think where people can maybe alleviate some of those issues is just like, if you want to be a private person, just don't overshare. So that means you don't have to comment on everything. That means you don't have to have an opinion on everything publicly. You can have your opinion in private in your business meetings with your teams, but you don't need to overshare, because now you've opened yourself up to a lot more criticism that could eventually impact your business. So I think that's something to really keep in mind. The other thing that comes to mind when I think about that question is you kind of have to understand what's your best communication tool. So is it video, or is it one of these images with a caption like Cam discussed earlier? Because you can say, Black Lives Matter, post a nice little caption and package it together, as opposed to recording a video, which you may not be as comfortable and you look uncomfortable and you're not conveying your message, and all those things matter in addition to like where you're distributing that. So is it Twitter, IG, TikTok? Is it Facebook? Is it Twitch? Like whatever your median is, you need to find that, stick to it, hone it, and really nurture that, so that you can really create that business and personal brand that mirror each other. So just my thoughts on that.
So we've all had the opportunity to speak on the content creators, the professional brand versus the business brand. But how important is it for content creators to remain authentic while growing their brand? And Benoni, because you've worked with and do work with Issa Rae, we do know that she's somebody who has tried to remain authentic since the beginning. So how important is it for content creators, Benoni, to remain authentic throughout their growth process?
I think it's incredibly important. I think, Issa, is an example that's used, and, she's remained pretty much the same, just a bigger audience from YouTube to HBO. But I also look at someone like a Cardi B who, we got to watch that growth like in real time. And it went from Instagram videos, I'm gonna say what I want to, and people laughing and like, oh, she's funny on social media, to now she's a superstar and still keeping the same energy, and people love and expect her to say certain things. Whereas there's other people who, if they were to say those same types of things, who come from the same genre or same environment, maybe people will be like, why are you speaking up now? They'll be all over Shade Room, and Shade Room the comments will be, littered with, who is this person? Who do they think they are? So I think that authenticity is incredibly important, and just being consistent with whatever your authenticity is. And one thing that I found is there's an audience for everything, whether I 100% agree with it or whether I 100% disagree with it. Even the people that I 100% disagree with, they still got their pocket of people that love them and that think that they're the greatest thing ever. So authenticity is important, and just being consistent with it, I think, will carry you a long way.
All right, Cam, same question for you. You worked with Will and Jada, who for a lot of us, they were these larger than life celebrities, and they decided to go ahead and go in a different direction and invite us into their homes in so many different ways. So that authenticness for them allowed us to now see them in a different space. So for you, how important is it to have content creators remain authentic throughout their growth process?
Man, I feel like authenticity is the, it's everything. It's really what provides you with the sustainability to be able to just go the long run, it's, man, I feel like every day I have to do a check-in with myself, like, okay, where am I at for Cam? Where's Cam trying to be at the end of this day? Where am I trying to be at the end of this week, this quarter, this year, et cetera? And just making sure that like I haven't really lost sight on who I am. I am from Wichita, Kansas, from the middle of the country, the Midwest, and there's so many things about who I was then and who I am now that I always just try to check in with. I'm trying to check in with myself and always remind myself of the things that that matter most and that are most important to my life as a creator, as an influencer, as a team member at Westbrook, et cetera. And making sure that I'm out here really like living and working in my truth, because I feel like I've had certain projects where I just feel like I was more so just trying to perform based on what the role description is or what was expected of due to just the responsibilities, but they didn't really align with who I was. So authenticity starts to go out the window. And I just told myself that that's not something that I really want to do moving forward. So the thing that I have done to be able to combat that is, like I was saying earlier, like those different check-ins. I want for anyone who comes after me or before me to look at my work and to say, you know what, like that 100% was Cam. Like we see Cam when we watch his Instagram story. We feel Cam when we watch something on TV that we know that he was a part of. We see Cam when we see him in public. We see Cam when we don't see him. We still know that there's someone out there who is authentically creating content that is trying to reach or trying to have an impact in these certain communities or in these different demographics. So for me, like authenticity is what gets me out of bed every morning. It's what makes me go to sleep, knowing that I gave today my best. And I just feel like without that, what are we really doing? You know, like anybody can get up every day and do something, but not everybody can say like they gave it their all, or not everyone can say that like when they look back, man, like I'm so proud of myself because things were tough, but I still did this, I still did that, and I stayed true to who I am, and my integrity as a person never was jeopardized. So authenticity for me is a big reason why I am and do the work that I do today.
Now, all of us have been a part of building brands or building our own brands. And for the most part, we all know what it takes to get to a certain level of success. There are quite a few people out here that feel like they know, but they may be missing a few things. Now, we all know that public relations, Joseph, is, a big part of growing your brand. So if you would, Joseph, go ahead and let us know, what role does public relations play in the growth of a brand?
Well, actually, can I answer that last question too? And then because they'll connect together. I do think that authenticity is your secret sauce, because your perspective and vision and who you are as like an artist and a creator will shine through. And then all public relations should do is amplify that. And Benoni said that earlier, like he wants to hear the artist's vision and he doesn't want to change them. My take on public relations is very similar. I don't, as a publicist, I can create the image that I know is going to work and people are going to eat up, and I can put you on magazines and I can do all these things. But if you're not comfortable doing those things and they don't align with you, then there's going to be a very big tug of war, and that's going to stop and even slow down that progress that we have. I mean, public relations, when it comes to building a brand, used to look a certain kind of way, and now it has changed. Before it was, you could just do these television shows, do these radio interviews, and do these things, and you'd be successful in whatever it was you were doing. Now, we don't have the same gatekeepers that we have. Like, Vogue is great, but, Cam and I know some really amazing photographers who do amazing jobs, and their work can go further than maybe a Vogue can go, or used to go rather. You may, because things have changed now with social media, you don't have the same issues that you had getting noticed. Like Benoni could probably attest to this because he works with musicians. Like, YouTube has changed things for people where you can see a performer live and they can blow up on a platform like that, or even TikTok or Instagram, and get discovered, where before, you had A&Rs camping out at different bars and clubs to hear people sing. They don't have to do that now. They have easy access. And so all those things change public relations, because now people have early access to you before a publicist can get to you to try to manipulate or change or, kind of work on things. And so those are things to like really consider and remember when we're talking about public relations, because it should really only accentuate what you already have and not change you completely from who you are. At least that's my take on how public relations play into branding.
And Karim, what role do you think public relations play in building the brands that other want to build, and the brands that you specifically been part of growing?
Public relations is so important in with all of the influencers I work with, because it really shapes the public perception. It shapes the reputation of that particular influencer. And when you're aligning brands, that's very important. Because I've worked with brands that are 100+ years old. So when you work with brands that are legacy brands like that, and you're working with an influencer, it's important that influencer does a great job, or his team does a good job, or her team does a good job of managing their PR, because that PR, that small relationship, it could be a year or less, can tarnish 100 years of legacy that brand has built So brands are very protective over, those partnerships. So I think and we all know, like, traditional marketing is kind of out the window. It's really now more about storytelling, more about the PR than it is sometimes about the talent. So it's important that the influencer and their team control the narrative. I've been in a few situations in my career where I've worked on a team and we've aligned with the celebrity on a campaign, and certain incidents come out, and there's stories that come out that are crazy, that I understand from a cultural standpoint. I understand the cultural nuances, but you got to understand you're dealing with multinational companies and things like that. They don't understand these nuances. So, that could really tarnish the relationship, not only with that particular brand, but it could also tarnish the relationship that influencer could have, potential future relationship with brands in that category, outside that category, because word of mouth spreads not only outside in culture, but also in the industry, word of mouth spreads. So I think it's very important that influencers have a crisis team that can quickly address issues as they come up, but also be very mindful, going back to that personal and business values and brands, being conscious of showing up both in your personal and your business life with respect to whatever relationship that you have with those brands. So I just think getting ahead of it, controlling the narrative through a strong PR team, including in that team a crisis team, is very important if you want to be a successful content creator and continue to work with brands throughout your career.
Okay. Now, we all know that 2020, 2021 has been a big year for cancel culture. So with that being said, do any of you have any tips on adding to like crisis teams when it comes to helping fix these issues before you're canceled?
I think you just start with like not saying stupid stuff and not doing stupid stuff. I know that sounds like so like easy to say, but there's just like certain things that in 2021, and I'm going to use the baby as an example, where you just don't say those things. And I don't, and I, and I want to give him grace because I understand that he doesn't come from the environment where he may have had certain opportunities to be educated on certain things. But you could have just said, "Hey, yeah, thank y'all for coming out. By the record," and keeping it simple, and you would have been fine, and he'd have still been performing at the 7 other shows that he was canceled from. So I think that, keeping it simple is great. I think if you do make a mistake and organizations are calling you out, your first music festival then decides to remove you, then you need to have a really thoughtful and heartfelt conversation with a media outlet that can really get your message out. I think what he did wrong was letting his ego get in front of him and start, getting on social media to double down on things. And you don't have the range on social media that you can have in an hour and a half conversation with a Robin Roberts or a Gail or a Oprah or any of these people who are experienced journalists who can really, thoughtfully dissect what you're trying to say. And I think that's the other thing. Like, if you don't want to get canceled, like, just keep it simple. You don't have to say certain things. And then if you do make a mistake and you do say something, because we are imperfect people, then you need to let your PR people do their job. It is not the time for you to then get it in front of things and try to say, "Oh, well, this ain't what I meant, but this, that, and the other," because now people are going to dig into you. And they're still going to dig into you once you do that media interview, but you're going to be prepped. You might even get the questions in advance, so you even have time to think about those answers. Like, there's so many different things that can help you get in front of being canceled. And I don't even think the baby's canceled, but I just think for right now, he's on timeout. But, those are examples where people just need to utilize their PR team that Karim talked about, because it's just simple. Just use your publicist after you make a mistake.
Yeah, I would just add, definitely, well, I don't even add, I just want to reinforce. I think that the big thing that you said is kind of like letting your team do their job and stepping out of the way. I think a lot of times, if you really think about cancel culture, most times it's not permanent. There's very few people that are canceled like permanently. You think about even like Kanye, people like that that do things consistently, and people, there's gonna be a lot of people that are gonna stick to their guns, but the mass of culture is going to be forgiving, and they're gonna give you grace if you show humility, if you show that you're trying to change, if you step back and give it time and allow people to do their job. But the permanent cancellations come when you just continuously F up. It's like you just continuously won't get out of the way of your pride and your ego. So it's really good that influencers submit to the process, submit to their crisis team's intelligence and their work. That's what they do. So just step out of the way and let them do their job.
All right. So we all know that when it comes to building a brand, becoming a startup company, one of the main resources that a lot of people lack is financial resources. Do you guys have any tips or any resources that can help people who have startup companies? Cam?
I don't know. This one's kind of tough for me to answer because I haven't really ever started up my own company, or I haven't, like, I've worked for companies that have been kind of in the earlier stages, but I don't know. It's a little bit difficult. I don't think that I'm as qualified as our audience would want to be able to speak to this one. But I would say really just making sure that you have like a core team when you're kind of starting things off and you have all the key players in place and strategy. I think all that type of stuff is really important so that when you guys do kind of like turn on the switch of like, all right, we live, everybody kind of know what their marching orders are and everybody has a clear understanding of what everyone's role is in order to make the company really pop off. I think staff is also really important. For whatever reason, a lot of startups always start very understaffed. And I'm like, you got to get those people in place before you go into the market, because if your company is what it is, then there's going to be a high demand for what you're trying to push out. And you want to make sure that you have all the necessary individuals to be able to to execute on all of the products or everything that you're trying to put into the market. So that would probably be some of my just very general advice or opinion based on experiences that I have had either working for a company that was fairly new or partnering with a company that was fairly new.
And Benoni, how about you? What kind of tips or resources do you have for people that are out there trying to secure that financial backing for their startup company?
Yeah, I mean, Cam hit on it, even though he doesn't believe that he hit on it. Like he actually hit on a lot of the things. I think that the staff situation is an issue, and obviously that's a nuance, but there's a lot of things to unpack there. But number one, most of these things start with yourself, right? Like you need to be on the internet reading and finding books and doing all of those things. All of those things, like before I ever met any professional in anything, real estate, taxes, financial management, I had already read the books about it. So I had an understanding, self-taught for a lot of these things. Then I met true professionals and I was able to have conversations with them and they would say, okay, this is how you do certain things. And then I'm able to give them feedback like, okay, but what about this? And they'll say, well, no, we can't do it this way. And this is why. So you're able to engage in a healthy dialogue about things as opposed to just having people tell you everything. Even contracts, like, this is outside of financials, but like every contract that I do, I read through it myself in addition to our attorneys, because oftentimes I'll find something where I'm like, oh, this line here is going to restrict me from doing something 3 months or 6 months from now. And so can we take that out or can we address that now? So I guess what I'm trying to say is, the self-education part is number one. And then if you have something, that you believe is of value, you got to be able to package that up, storytell, and you got to be able to sell that thing. So when you're putting together a deck or you're putting together, you're partnering with people, you have to be strategic about who you're partnering with, how the deck is, how the story is being told. All of those things kind of come into it, and then the rest can be history. For us, we started off with Awkward Black Girl. Awkward Black Girl we didn't ask for, well, we did ask for money, we didn't get it. So a lot of it we had to do on our own. And that eventually grew. And then before you know it, the floodgates were open and people saying, hey, we want to partner with you. And then when you partner with them, then, you know, there's nuances and there's things that you have to work out even in that. But, you know, I say all that to say self-education first, and then package up what it is that you're trying to sell, and then go from there.
All right. Now, Kareem, we know your history working with the major brands, but recently you took a leap of faith and got into something on your own. So for you as a new brand, I would say, how can you learn and build and create a core audience?
I mean, for me, throughout even working with the bigger brands, my favorite part of my whole career, what I do is tribal, like building my tribe, cultivating my tribe, speaking to my tribe. That is fun to me. I'm always like much more of a fan of storytelling. So for me, I put a lot of my time, emphasis in being transparent. Even going back to what you were saying earlier about raising money, I've seen this so many times here in Atlanta where, you know, small businesses have just been honest. Like, I'm launching my business, you know, hey guys, I would love your support. Can you subscribe to this? Can you buy this little bundle that I have right now that's going to help? You know, here's where you are. Just being very transparent. I'm trying to raise $300,000. I'm at 10,000, trying to raise, I need 200 more thousand. Hey, you first 100 people that, you know, sign up or spend this money is going to be, you know, at the welcome event or whatever. Just finding ways to speak to your tribe and bringing them into the process, allowing them to grow with you, can really speak volumes. And I've seen that time and time and again with the brands that I built, with the companies I work with. Even before like influencer marketing was the buzzword, that was just kind of part of it, just allowing the consumers to see themselves in that particular process and grow with you, was so key. So that's something that, you know, I'm spending more time. I'm good at it, but there's always more to learn. So I'm just constantly like, you know, trying new things, trying new ways of storytelling, inviting more partners into the storytelling, finding new ways to be transparent, using new tools, reading more, as Benoni said, like reading more about what other successful storytellers have done. But I think it's really about tapping into that tribe that really allows you to unlock that growth that you're looking for.
Now, Joseph, for you working with the OWN network, you guys are putting out new content all the time. How do you guys learn and build and tap into grabbing a core audience for what you guys release?
I think it starts with the content and the stories you want to tell. Like, you have to have an idea of who you want to tap into. And, you know, at OWN, our audience is Black women. And so, you know, what we focus on is telling stories that'll resonate well with Black women. I think that's key. I think authenticity as well. So we try to, you know, make sure we're partnering with folks who can authentically tell those stories. I think that's also helpful. You know, whenever you're talking about curating an audience, it's important to make sure that, and Kareem said this earlier so well, and so I hope I don't mess it up, but understanding cultural nuance in a way, because we can make a joke as Black men that maybe Black women don't understand, and Black women can make a joke as Black women that maybe Black men don't understand. But also as Black people, there are cultural nuances that we just understand inherently. And so understanding that, you know, you can create content that speaks to different people in different ways and not shying away from that, like leaning into that and really going hard and full force. And then ultimately, and it goes back to authenticity, what we've been saying throughout this entire discussion, being the you know, the real gatekeeper for you to make you successful.
Okay. And for our final question, and this is something that I want all of you to answer. How does culture impact the work that you do? And what advice would you give creatives to take advantage of culture and technology, you know, to their advantage? And with that, we'll start with you, Cam.
Yeah. For me, culture is a big part of what I do because it's a big part of who I am. And with the different places that I've lived and the different cultures that I've been able to experience, to me, it's just like that warm feeling like that gets me excited when I have an idea for a story or a piece of content. I'm always, there was that, we kind of made it a little corny, but you know what, everybody out here on like We For the Culture and all that type of stuff, we played it out, but the message is still strong and it's still true to this day in regards to the work that we doing, like that we do is really for the culture, you know? And when I think about everything from the way I show up to a meeting with how I dress, the way that I articulate myself when I'm speaking to a certain brand, or how I walk onto a set, the type of work that we're doing, the idea or the people that I'm thinking about when I'm writing a script, et cetera. Like, to me, it all comes down to the culture. So for me, it's just really important to always tap into that. And to me, when you think about your audience, or when you think about like who you're actually creating the content for, you have to think about everything about them. It's not just about, oh, their age 18 or whatever, living in this demographic. It's just like, what do they eat? What type of shows do they watch? What are the way that they dress? How do they hang out on the weekends? Like, you know, what utensils do they use to eat their food? Are they type of people who like eating food by their hands or with their forks? This is when I was at Complex, you know, we had First We Feast and we were always thinking about like food porn and all that type of stuff. But all of that stuff goes down to culture. And it's just things that for me, honestly, just really gets me excited, because I think about like what Kansas culture was when I was growing up in like the 90s. And I think about what New York culture was when I got to live there for the years that I was there. Now I'm looking at what LA culture is looking like, what streetwear culture is, what is Hollywood Black culture. Like, there's just all these different things that I feel like are really special and unique and just really makes us who we are. So when I'm like creating anything, I'm always just thinking about the culture and just thinking about like how I can like add to it and create something that is going to have a legacy and is going to be very timeless, and something where 20 years from now, when people are talking about how brothers like everybody on this call showed up to everything that we do, like I want them to feel like, man, like the culture was dope. The culture created a space for these men to be able to thrive and create all this incredible work that we are still talking about to this day. We want to replicate it. When you think about 90s culture, 80s culture, like we see that. I mean, I'm a Midwest boy, but I'm rocking like my little my Midwest style with a little bit of my West Coast flair, you know? So all of that is culture, and all of that goes into everything that I do and everything that I am. So for me, culture is just it, and culture and authenticity, because we know there's a lot of culture vultures out there. You know, it's just really important, and it's something that really gets me excited.
Okay, now Benoni, same question. How does culture impact the work that you do, and how would you tell content creators to take advantage of culture and technology?
Yeah, culture is everything to what I do. You know, we're telling the stories of the culture through music, through film, through TV, all of it. We're just giving that spotlight to it, and we're introducing it to people as well. So culture is a huge part of everything that I do. One thing that I try to just be cognizant of is, you know, and it goes back to the first part of this conversation is, okay, what are the goals here whenever we're doing a project? Because there's some culture things that you can do that could literally be for the culture, quote unquote. And then there's some things that you can do that can be like, okay, we're going to build a culture business, or we're going to build a business that's rooted in culture. But at the end of the day, we want a business that, you know, receives X amount of profits. And that's a question that I have to constantly ask myself, and I have to battle with every day, because again, there's some things that you're going to do that's, you know, is going to be a money play in the culture, and there's some things that you're going to do that's just to push the culture forward. So culture is always at the forefront of my mind in everything that I do, and I'm always just trying to continue to move the needle and to make sure that people know that the culture is not a monolith and there's just different variations of it.
Okay, Kareem, how about you?
I mean, for me, I look at it like the culture is the nucleus of everything I do. I feel indebted to the culture. It's like the culture is what allowed me to eat and everybody on this call to eat. So for me, it's about, you know, understanding that it's a living, breathing organ. It's not some abstract kind of concept. It's living and breathing, and the culture goes where we go. So for me, it's important about the creators also understanding their power and being stewards of the culture. So I try to tell them, be stewards of the culture, and the culture will deliver sevenfold. So if you do what's right by the culture is going to deliver, and it's shown over and over. If you do what's right, your tribe is going to lock in. You lock in on your authenticity, your tribe is going to lock in. They're going to grow with you as you grow. They're going to continue to buy, and you're going to grow. So, but as soon as you start to pollute the culture, things like that, then you're going to get that back sevenfold. So like, I just think it's very important when you talk about the culture that we don't, everyone, creators, don't look at it like some abstract, like we are the culture. So the culture goes where we go. As long as you understand the culture goes where you go, then you're going to make the right decisions.
All right, and Joseph.
I think it's really important when we think about culture to understand that it's a lot of different things. And I mean that in the sense that like there's, you know, work culture for Black folks. There's the way we dress is the way we speak, even the foods we eat. Bless you, Q. And all those things contribute to overall Black culture. But what also contributes to Black culture is who we are as individuals. You know, so like every one of us comes from different backgrounds. I am a gay Black man from Houston, Texas, went to a HBCU. And I take all those things with me to represent us as a whole, because I'm not just one of those things, I'm all of those things put together. And so when I say what I said about, you know, culture is a lot of things, we got to make sure that when we're doing the work, that we're bringing all that fullness in with us to each place, because that's what's really going to, you know, move the culture forward, because we all represent different perspectives of the culture. I really think that's what's important. And I think the way you use that to your advantage is with technology these days. Like I said, we don't have the same gatekeepers. So if you want to tell the story about the gay Black boy at a HBCU that works for Oprah Winfrey, you can do that. If you want to be the gentleman who lives in Atlanta that worked on behalf of like brands and started his own thing, you can do that. If you want to be the young man who, you know, is working for Will and Jada as a creative director, you can do those things. If you're going to be the next Benoni, you can share those stories of the other Benonis out there by bringing in everything that you have with you. And I think that's really important when we think about culture. It's not just one monolithic thing. Culture is a lot of different things for a lot of different people in our community.
All right. Now, guys, the time went by fast, but we definitely appreciate each and every one of you for taking time out of your schedule and sharing some of your wisdom with us. Now, for people out there who would like to stay connected with you guys, if you all would, give us your website, your social media, however you prefer to be contacted. And with that, we'll start with you, Benoni, Cam, Karim, and then Joseph.
Thank you for the time. I had a great time. It was just great to hear everything. My socials is at NoniBiz. That's NoniBizz. It's NoniBizz. And then my company is The Radio. So it's TheRadio on all social platforms.
Yeah, so people can get in contact with me at Kameron_Depaul. That is KAMERON_DEPAUL. It's the same across my Instagram, Twitter. I'm also on Facebook. Yeah, and I just want to say big shout outs to you guys for creating this space for us to be here. And it was such a pleasure getting to connect with all these incredible men on this call today. Much love to you all.
First of all, I want to say thank you for thinking of me to be a part of this panel with such distinguished Black men. Like, I feel so much smarter after this call. I mean, after this conversation, you know, thank you guys for contributing to that. And, you know, as far as myself getting in contact with me, I kept it very simple. I mean, it's just my name. If you the biggest part is understand how to spell my name. If you know how to spell my name, you're going to find me. It's the same thing on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, www.karimlateef.com. Everything is Karim Lateef. So very simple. You can find out other things I'm working on from that. But thank you for allowing me to be here today.
I would agree. Like, you know, thank you for the community of men that are on this call. Like, it's great to learn and listen from each of you, because you all bring different expertise and It's been a pleasure. You all can follow me on Twitter or Instagram. It's just I am JoeCarnell. It's the same on Instagram and the same on Twitter.